Um, so in the previous example, we have completed with the export utility. We have seen the different options of the export utility: exporting of a single table and exporting of a table space. Exporting of a database level, user level, and the table level we have seen. And also we will be seeing some additional export utility when the corresponding topic is coming. For example, there is an option where which you can export the tables belong to a particular table space for a specific cost called the transportable table space, where which if you wanted to relocate or we wanted to plug in a table space from one database to another database, in that case we will use a feature called transportable table space. That is not used regularly, so we'll not be covering that as part of this current topic. Whenever the suitable topic is coming, we'll be taking that option. And incremental export backup is not commonly used in the real time. So I would suggest you guys to explore that incremental backup option, incremental logical backup option. If you face any difficulties, then let me know. I'll able to help you on it. Okay, now we have taken the export of the table, database, etc. Now let's try to import. Let's try how the import is working. Import is a utility to insert the data, and the source of that import utility is the export data from or export files, which is created by the export utility. One point to be noted. So I discussed about the two utilities, that is export and the export data pump, as well as import and import data pump. So export and export data pump is used for extracting the data. Import and import data pump is used for inserting the data. But these are not cross compatible. What I meant to say is that you cannot use the file of an export to export utility as the input of import data pump utility. The same way, you cannot use the input of or the output of an export data pump utility as an input of the import utility. Is that clear? The input of the import utility should be the file created by the export utility. The same way, the input of the import data pump utility, IMDP utility, should be the file created by the export data pump utility. Am I clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what are the important parameters to be used in the case of the import utility. So to get any help out of either export or import or data pump or whatever, you can just give the utility space help equal to y. For example, IMP help equal to y. Okay, so here you can see that it is as the normal export, it is asking you the user ID, the password, the file. File here stands for the input file. That is nothing but the normal data, DMP file created by your export. And then show will be just list the file contents. Okay, and then full, if you're looking at the full, here on the right side you can see the full option. In the case of the full option, if you want to import the contents of the entire file, say for example, I think yesterday Anbu or somebody asked me, like say I think Sharada asked me, when I take the full database backup, can I use that for importing a particular schema? Okay, so in that case what happens is, if you wanted to do that, say for example you have a full database backup is there, but your requirement is to import a particular schema or a particular table. In that case you must give full equal to no. By default full equal to no only. So what happens is that the entire contents of the export file will not be imported. Based on the next conditions whatever we are giving, that only that contents will get imported. Am I clear? Okay, fine. Then if you wanted to say import a particular user, then you have to use the from user. For example, say you are importing the contents of a Wiseship user. So your input will be from user equal to Wiseship. Or else if you have multiple users to be imported, the schemas of multiple users to be imported, then you can give the comma separated usernames. For example, from user equal to test1 comma test2, or user1 comma user2. So these are the two users. And then um, to user means from which user to which user you want to import. For example, import is always expecting that the import will be done by the schema owner. Okay, so if you are using the import as a separate user, as another user, then you have to use the from user and to user. So when from user and to user is kind of a mapping. So from user stand for the what is the username in the source database, and to user indicates the username on the target database. So it's a kind of a mapping. For example, if you wanted to you have a user called user1 in your source database, but you wanted to import that to a user called user2 on the target database, then in that case you will be using the clause from user is equal to user1 and to user is equal to user2. Is that clear?
Yes, Simon.
Okay. And then like in the other case of export utility, suppose if you wanted to get the log file, like if you wanted to get the screens, normally whenever the export and import is running, the output will be written to the screen. But instead of going to the screen, if you wanted to write it to your log file, then you can give the log equal to the path of the log file. That is an option. And then like if you wanted to use the incremental type whatever you have exported, then you can give the incremental type if you are giving incremental if you are using the incremental backups, then you have to use the incremental type import while importing as well. And then if you want to import the grants and the constraints etc., then you have to give the corresponding. By default the grants, indexes and constraints are default, so which means whenever you are importing, the indexes also for the table will get created, the permissions and the constraints also will get created. And then another important point here to be noted is that ignore the create errors. What means, say when import you are running the import, by default import is not expecting that table is already existing. Okay, so how the import statement is goes is that if you open the dump file in a v editor or something, you can understand that the import will be first creating the objects. For example, assume that your export was having a table, a single table that you are exporting. So while you are importing, it is going to create the table first. Once the table is created, then it is going to insert the records. So what happens then, when suppose on the target you are having the object already, like you have your table already existing out there. So while you run the import, the create table statement is going to fail. Okay, because the object is already exist. So it is the import will be failing, telling that the object is already existing. Am I clear? See, while you import, what happens that the create table, if the table is there, the first statement is a create table. So when you're running the create table and the table is already there, naturally that warning is going, or the error is going to happen and the import is going to fail. So if you wanted to avoid that errors, or if you wanted to continue the import even if the tables are existing there, then you have to use the clause ignore equal to y. By default ignore is equal to no, which means the import is going to fail when objects are already existing. When you are giving import equal to ignore equal to yes, what happens that it will ignore the errors due to the object existence, and then it will be continuing to do the import. So this option is useful when you want to import the tables or import the contents to an existing table. Assume that you are already having a table and you wanted to append the records to the table. In that case, you must use ignore equal to y and continue with the import. Okay, and then there is a clause called option called destroy equal to yes or no. Destroy in the sense when you are doing the full database import, so it is going to create the table spaces. maybe in the previous option, like in that particular database, maybe that corresponding data files may be there. So if you wanted to drop that particular data files, and then, or if you wanted to overwrite, then you have to give destroy equal to y. Normally, if you are not giving, what happens is that, as I explained in the time of the table space creation, if the data files are already existing, then it will be reducing the time for formatting. So you have to take a call whether you wanted to use the existing data file or you wanted to create a new data file.
Okay.
And then another option is that the index file. Index file is useful when in the situations where in which, say, you wanted to get, you say your requirement is that you don't want to create the say for example, let's take a live example where in which, say, your application team came with a requirement that they wanted to refresh your production database to a development database, but they don't want the data, rather they want the structure of the database. You got me? So when you want the structure of only the structure of the database, and then if you wanted to get an SQL which contains the all the create statements of the tables, indexes, etc., then you can give index file and with the file name. So when you run the import with the index file with the file name, it is not going to insert the records to the table. Rather, it is going to create a file with all the create table, create indexes commands. Am I clear?
Yes.
So that will be useful when you, whenever the usage of that is coming is whenever you wanted to replicate the structure of the database from one database to another database. So you have two databases are there, but on the structure wise both are different. So you wanted to have the same table structure, index structure, etc., to be available on the target. So at that time you can use this option. And before that, before every all these discussions, the important point is that import is not going to create a new database. Okay, import will be working only on an existing database. So if you wanted to export the entire contents of the source database and import to the target database, the steps will be that you have to take you have to create an empty database on the target, and then you should allow the import to be taken. If the import is not there, sorry, if the database is not there, then import is not going to run. Am I clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
So
yeah,
Vimal, when
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so when you're trying to import the structure of the database, so does it mean that it will not copy the database, the data file, or just the table space on the
Yeah,
tables it will
say
copy that?
that's what I'm telling. Say here, say if you wanted to have the same table space extra as of that of the source, in that case what you should do is that you should be while exporting, there was an option that rows only. Okay, so including data, so including data, then the option is that it is going to include the data also. Suppose if your requirement is that you wanted to have, say, you have a database called A is there, and you have a database called B is there, you wanted to get a replicate or replica of B in such a way that all the table spaces, everything, users, everything is available on the second database. In that case you have to run, I'm sorry, you have to run the export with rows equal to no. So it will not export the data, but it will be having the table space structure, user creation statement extra, and then you run the import on the target. Okay, so that is one option. Second option is that you are not worried about the table spaces extra, rather you are worried about the structure of the tables and indexes of a table or a schema, etc. In that case, maybe like, say, you would have been taken the export of the entire database or maybe entire schema, etc., but the requirement is coming that I don't want the data but only the structure. In that case, it is useful to create an index file and then run that index file just like a normal SQL commands on the target database. Is that
Okay.
clear, Hari?
Ah, yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Then other options is that feedback you are already available. Skip unusable indexes. So if some of the indexes are corrupted or they are not, they are in a stale states, then you can skip that importing of that indexes. And then yeah, other options are that compile procedures, package, and functions. So whenever whenever you are importing, import is going to recompile your objects. Like you have a procedure is there, you have a function is there, and you have a create a view command is there. So in those cases, the compile option, the alter object recompile command will be automatically executed. So that is by default. Why is that? So you, unless you don't want to recompile while the import, then you don't have to make any changes on this particular parameter. Okay. Now another option, the three options which is recently introduced from, or I think from Oracle 10G it has introduced, that is a resumable option. See, the point to be noted is that, say, while your import is taking place, import, as I explained earlier, import is an insert statement to the database. So naturally, whenever you are not having enough size or enough space on the table space, then the import statement may get failed, right? So to say, assume a situation where which you started a large import, the whole database or a big schema import is there, and the import is failing at the last stage, and you go, and you went for a break, or you went for the day, because obviously the size of the database is quite big. So you are sure that import is not going to complete within a day or within 12 hours of time. So you would have started the import job, and you would have gone to your home, or you gone to any other break kind of thing. So while coming, the import is failed due to, at the end of the import, it is failed due to the space issue. Then it's a waste of time. So to avoid that, what Oracle is giving is an option is that you can trigger an resumable option. Okay, there are three values to be given. So if you are giving resumable equal to a y, then the import statement will get suspended when a table space or space related issues are occurred. Is that clear?
Yes.
Say, for example, you are giving resumable equal to s. In that case, while import is taking place and the table space is filled up, at that time the import will be suspended. For how long it will be suspended? Till the resumable timeout option is based on the resumable timeout value. So, for example, in the real time, you may give the resumable timeout to say some 6 hours of time. So the import statement will be suspended for 6 hours of time. So after the 6 hours of time, or before the 6 hours of time, whenever the space issue is resolved, then the import will be resumed. Am I clear?
Yes.
How about others?
It will be resumed automatically.
Yes, it will be resumed automatically. You don't have to do anything.
Probably
So,
because it may be using internal checkpoints, right?
Yeah.
I mean the data loading checkpoints.
It is once the space is given, then it will because the import statement is always keep on checking whether that issue is resolved or not. So once the issue is resolved, it will be automatically restarting the import.
okay, so is there a way we can set the email alerts during the export function of the the status of it?
Say import is not giving you that option because Oracle has not given that option as a part of the import utility. But what you can do is that you can write your own shell script. Okay, so when what you have to do is that, say, you have to have a program running, the import is to be run from a shell script, and then say you create the output to a log file, and then one of your program should be looking through the log files, and whenever a suspended message is coming, then you can write in such a way that the program will be sending a mail to you, or send a page to you, to your send a SMS to your mobile or whatever.
So we
But
have to export from that shell script.
yeah,
You have to do the export function from the shell.
Yeah, you call the export function from the shell script, and then check the log files, and if you are getting suspended or failed or whatever it be, based on your checking condition, you can trigger a email notification.
Okay, all right.
Can we import the lower version of the export file to the higher version? That means if we take the export from 10G,
Yeah, you
can we import that? Yeah,
You can.
okay, to the. Okay.
Yeah. In the case of say that is actually possible, or it is being handled more beautifully in export data form and import data form. In the case of export, suppose if you wanted to export the data from a lower version to higher version, what you have to do, sir, you have to just take the export from say for example your requirement is that you wanted to take the export of 10G data and you wanted to import it to 11G. That is your requirement. So in that case, what you can do is that you can take an export of 10G database from 10G itself. Okay, and then use that data, use that use that file and run the import utility from your target. Okay, that is straightforward. Actually, there is no complication in that. But the reverse will be a bit complicated. For example, you want to import the data of your 11G database to 10G. In that case, what you should do is that you should connect to your 11G database from 10G client. You got me? Like you have to run, you have to connect say export username password at the rate the 11G database TNS. So basically what you are doing is that you are connecting to your 11G database using the 10G client and then do the export and then use that export file for importing on the 10G database.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Vimal, can you connect to a higher version database using a lower version client?
Yeah, it is like that compatibility is more important. You cannot connect it to higher version from all the lower versions. So for example, to connect it to 11G database from 10G is possible, but may not be possible from 8A or 9A. Got it?
Oh, okay.
So
Maybe just
but
a newer version of it.
yeah, so you have to before you trying that you have to just one second. So you want to if I understood you correctly, you have a dump file, is it? From there you wanted to find out whether it's a 10G's dump file or 11G's dump file. Is that what you?
Yeah, what type of dump file? Yeah, like it is incremental dump, full dump, like like
No,
the timestamp, all that information.
okay.
but you said that it's a binary file, right? The DMP would be binary file. Can you?
Yeah.
I
See,
don't think so.
you have what I would suggest is that don't it is not a recommended method, but what you can do is that you can just view it, use the view option, okay, and then exp that dot dump. So here you can see that the version of the export utility which is executed.
But in Sybase, I don't remember the exact, like, the option we have. But when we try to load it, there is an option, it doesn't load, but it gives the header information, like, what type of file, like, the export file is. We don't
Yeah.
need to open the file, particular file.
Okay.
But when we try to import, that means load it, like, we have an option that it doesn't load the data file, the export or whatever,
See,
like, the dump file.
for example, here an option is there, IMP, okay, user ID /SS. Okay, so here what I did is that I just issued the command user ID /SSDB file exp.dmp and show equal to y. So here you can see that if you are want to run see the contents of that file. For example, it may not be, yeah, say when you are giving this command, that is import file equal to file name and show is equal to y and full equal to y. In that case, what happens is that it is give you all this information. For example, here you can see that as the what is the version of the import utility that is you are running. Okay, and then it shows you what is the version at which the file is created, and what is the, whether it's a direct path or a conventional path. So that way you can get it. One option is that just use the a normal operating system command to extract the header of the dump file, but you must always make sure that you are using a copy, not the original one, because if it is actually it's corrupted, then you will end up without any option to import the data. Otherwise,
Yeah,
you can use the show equal to y option. In that case, it's going to tell you that what is the version of the export utility which is exported, and the basic additional details like what is the characters that it's used, etc.
yeah. Opening the file physically is not a good idea because it might get corrupted
Yeah,
also.
obviously
Yeah.
so that's what I told you. If you
Yeah.
wanted to quickly get a quick idea, in that case you can use the view command, but again, don't use on the original file. You make a copy of that file and then you open this copy.
Okay.
Original file, you keep it intact. Okay, so this is an option. This full equal to y is an option which will help you to see the contents of your import file. So before importing, you wanted to make sure that you are importing the right file. So this is option here. Because just seeing the header will not help you. Suppose if you wanted to know whether the export file is actually contains the tables which I am expecting. In that case, you have to just use a show equal to yes and full equal to y. Any questions here? Okay. So in our case, you can see that all the files belong to the user Vaishek. So let's try to import it and see how it is. Okay. I'll give import. First we'll go ahead with the interactive manner, and then we'll see whether we'll see to go ahead with the bar file import. I'll give Vaishek equal to import the data. See here, import the data only. No means it's going to create the table and import the data. Okay, so I'll give no. Import file is yes. No. Import the contents of the list the contents of the import file only means it's equal to show equal to y. So if you want to see the contents only, then you can give that here yes. Otherwise, you can give no, which will not be worried about the contents, but it will be starting the import. Then ignore the create error due to object existence. No. Import grants, yes. Import table data, yes. Import the entire export file, yes. Okay, now you can see that it is import is failed. It says that import failed due to the reason that objects are already existing. As I said, import is going to create the tables first. It will attempt to create the table first, and then it will try to import the data. Since the objects are already there, import is failed. Fine. Now we will run this import once again.
But data would be inserted, right?
No, it will
Even
not.
though that.
No, it will not. It will not. When import, this is a kind of fatal error. So when it
Okay.
hit that error, then it will exit. It will not continue.
Okay.
Otherwise, you should tell
So
the next step. What we are going to do then? We are telling Oracle to ignore that error.
ignore that
Yes.
warnings. Yeah.
Import
Update
file.
existing warning.
Here, ignore create error due to object existence. Yes. Import grants. Yes. Import table data. Yes. Import entire export file. Yes. Now we can see that it is importing. Maybe there may be no records in that particular table, so it is not recorded. But otherwise, you can see that the number of records which is imported by the import utility.
So where did you provide the path to the export data.dmp.
Yeah, here
Where
see,
it is.
yeah, it is by default it is showing the exp data. By default the file name which the import utility is expecting is exp.dump. So since that file is already there, I didn't give a new path because it's the default name. You got me? So for example, now the next one, if I'm trying, say import /sysdba import data now. Here I want to give full.exp, sorry, full.dmp. Assume that that is my path, or else I give that /data/full.dmp. Okay, it is going to tell that it will try to read from that file. If the file is not existing, it's going to fail. That clear?
In import file exp.dmp, it took from the current directory.
Current directory, yes.
Vimal?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Now what you will do? That we'll see another example. I'm not going through each and every example because I'm expecting that you guys would be exploring, but I'm just showing you the another interesting example. That is how we are importing the contents of from one table, one user to another user. Okay. So say for example, let's create a user.
Hey.
Okay. So my intention is that I wanted to import the contents of Vaishid user to Vaishid1 user. Fine. So I'll give import. Sorry, I need to know import. I'm going to create a par file. We'll create a par file and we'll see how to use a par file. imp.par. Okay. Here I'll tell file equal to exp.bat.tmp full equal to y from user equal to Vaishid to user equal to Vaishid1. Okay, this is my requirement. imp par file equal to imp.par /s. Here there is need not to give when you are using the from user to user, then no need to give the full option. Okay, so here you can see a message importing the Vaishid1's object to Vaishid, the Vaishid objects to Vaishid1, and you can say a table test1 is got created. Now if you are looking, select table underscore name from dba underscore tables where owner equal to you can say a table is already created. So any questions here?
Why does the
PowerPoint.
message say that import terminated successfully instead of import done successfully?
That is the terminology that is used.
This confused with the word terminated.
I understand.
In the PowerPoint file, we can give that log file in log file also,
Yes,
right?
yeah, whatever the options are available there, all the options can be given to the part file.
Okay.
Fine. Any other questions? Okay. So what I would like to do use that, say, create a database. The exercise as an exercise, you can say, create a database with a couple of objects, and then create another empty database, and make sure that you are able to do a cloning of or a refreshing of the source database to the target. So how you have to make sure that, say, you have to make sure that you have, before starting the import on the source, you have to take account of how many objects are there, what is the number of records extra, and then once the import is completed, then you have to cross verify, making sure that whatever you are completed is exactly, I mean, your target database is an exactly the replica of the source database, because that is one of the common tasks that you will be getting as a DBA, that is refreshing the database from production to development or to the staging. And and also do that schema level refresh. For example, you are from one schema, you are replicating the data to another schema, like the from user and to user, whatever option we have learned now.
Uh, Vimal, generally for a database refresh from production to other, we can use Arman, right? Generally, they will be using Arman. Like schema and object level thing, we can use this export import, right?
I think, yeah, creating
That's
database and
what you
all.
also said. When we discussed this,
Yes,
you said that,
Arman is the option. I'm not denying that Arman is option, but this also will be handy. Say there are places where, in which, for example, you are having your sources on Linux environment, and your staging is on the Windows environment. So at that time, this may be useful handy. Got me?
Mm.
So that option is, Arman is a quickest method than the logical backup and import. But obviously, we should learn the logical backup method as well, because we don't know when it will be useful and when it's, because say in the real time what happens that these all works very well in the ideal situations. But there are situations where in which your Arman backups are corrupted, right? So at that time you may have, say for example, you may end up in a situation where in which your database is corrupted, and you are trying to restore the Arman backup. Arman backup is not working, or Arman itself also got corrupted. You have a 2 days or 3 days backup, logical backup is there. So you will be using the logical backup and creating the database. So the situations can be different. So getting the practice is very much important on these things.
Okay. But
Yeah. Okay, so do that exercises, and then let's discuss more about that in the next class.